Good evening, good evening. This is Phil Dixon coming to you live this evening with today's edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. And this is going to be the September 30th, 2025 edition. And if you've never joined us before, if this is your first time joining us in a live, what we do is, or what I do, is I give you a Black history fact that happened on this day. And because I've been researching for over 45 years, what I do is give you commentary that goes right along with it. So I'm going to jump right in here. I want to thank everybody for joining. If you're joining later and you like what's going on here, be sure to subscribe. And if you really like it, if you're a baseball fan, go ahead and share it on your page. I enjoy that very much. But we're going to give some facts and we're going to go from here. So let's get ready to start. Let me get a drink of water because we're going to bring a lot of information tonight. Yeah, so I was going through a few things. So, all right then, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, we're going to go to September 30th, 1900. So we're going to start in the 20th century there. And a crowd of 3,000 people witnessed the Chicago Columbia Giants 5-3 win over the Chicago White Stockings at Southside Park. Harry Buckner struck out 8 batters, and Grant Home Run Johnson homered in the winning effort. Hey, Grant Home Run Johnson, okay, well, first of all, they're playing the Chicago White Stockings. You know who that is. That's the White Sox. And that was around the time they were organizing the American League. So anyway, you got a great team. The Columbia Giants were in 1899. They were one of the great African-American baseball teams, which generally means that they were one of the greatest teams in America. And so, but their star players, of course, are 2 players that I kind of singled out here, Harry Buckner and then Grant Home Run Johnson. Grant Home Run Johnson was the first player to really ever have the name home run as a nickname for himself. And then later on, you know, you had Home Run Baker who came along with the Athletics, but believe me, Home Run Baker never approached the hitting prowess of Grant Home Run Johnson. And what's really a shame is that Grant Home Run Johnson continues to get looked over or overlooked, we can put it that way, when it comes to Hall of Fame recognition. This guy should be in Cooperstown. And he was a great player on some really good teams, starting with the Paige Giants, later on the Columbia Giants, a team that originated their name out of the Columbia Exposition that was held in Chicago. Later on with the Cuban Giants, with the Philadelphia Giants, with the Brooklyn Royal Giants, back with the Leland Giants in 1910. This guy was a great player, shortstop, but also could play some pretty good second base and was an outstanding manager. So this is just an important guy to the whole genre of baseball. And of course, he passed away in Buffalo, New York. And he's just a guy that just doesn't get the recognition that he deserves. And that's a daggum shame. So anyway, just want to make sure we always talk about Grant Home Run Johnson out of Findlay, Ohio. That's where he was born. And of course, Harry Buckner. Harry Buckner, in the history of the Negro baseball leagues, or at that particular time, the color leagues, Harry Buckner is the one player who is a great pitcher and a great home run hitter. This is a guy, he was hitting home runs, tape measure home runs, long before Babe Ruth ever came along and started pitching and hitting home runs. Harry Buckner was the real deal. Harry Buckner passed away in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the 1930s. So just a great player. He ended up being a trainer for the Milwaukee Brewers in the American Association. So just somebody that we need to remember. Okay, let's go to another one. Okay, so let's jump to 1906, September 30th, 1906. The Philadelphia Giants win 3 games in one day. Just imagine playing 3 games in one day. So they beat the Royal Giants by a 6-1 score in Elizabeth, New Jersey in the morning. Then they went to Brighton Field, that's over in Brooklyn at that time, and beat the Cuban Giants 8-2 in a 7-inning game with Emmett Bowman pitching. And they ended the day with a 5-2 8-inning victory over the Brighton team. And the Brighton team, if you know, I've written about them before. they were loaded with ex-minor leaguers, ex-American, ex-national leaguers on their team, and they played out of Brooklyn. And they usually were able to play on Sundays, regardless of the Sabbath day laws and that stopped like teams like the New York Highlanders, or later on the Yankees, and teams from Philadelphia from playing in on Sunday because of the blue laws. So the Brightons, sometimes they would even have guys come over from the big league team. Some of them would, I used to hear ball players say some of them would turn their jersey inside out, and they would play as a member of some of these teams and get a few extra at-bats in on a Sunday and pick up some extra money. So pick up some of that loose change. How about that? Okay, so that's a couple of things that we have here. Okay, and let's go to the next one. Let's go to September 30th, 1907. How about this? We're going to talk about Home Run Johnson again. Home Run Johnson, Brooklyn Royal Giants crush the Philadelphia Giants, we just talked about them, by a 16-4 score in Middleton, New Jersey. And Harry Buckner, remember Harry Buckner, who back at the turn of the century was beating the White Stockings? Well, he tossed a 5-hitter for the win. He was still a good pitcher, still hanging in there. Let's keep on going. So September 30th, 1911, Andrew Ruth Foster's Chicago American Giants beat Bugs Raymond. He's on the mound, and they beat him 9-5, and he was recently released by the New York Giants, and he's pitching for Gunthers. So this is a game that took place in Chicago. And so they knocked Raymond off the mound after 8 innings of pitching. And then Foster's team had gotten 4 hits off of him to gain the win. So Bugs Raymond, pretty famous guy. But at that particular time, Raymond, I think he played for the New York, well, I did put in here, he played for the New York Giants. But John McGraw released him because basically he was an alcoholic. He had a drinking problem. And so he was a great pitcher, but kept falling off the wagon. And so McGraw got tired of him. And of course, you know, there were several guys like that. Rube Waddell was a guy that they struggled with. You know, good pitchers, but they had issues. And so he got a chance to actually pitch against Ruth Foster, and Ruth Foster beat him. So Bugs Raymond, you can find some interesting stories on him if you kind of Google out there. We're gonna go to another one. How about September 30th, 1934. So this, boy, we're jumping around. So we went from 1911 to 1934. That's quite a jump. So yeah, I have here 25,000 people saw a 4-team doubleheader played by the Philadelphia Stars versus the Pittsburgh Crawfords, and the American Giants versus the New York Black Yankees. The Crawfords won the first game 3-1. Satchel Paige beat Slim Jones, and game 2 was cut short. It ended up being a 6 innings, cut short by darkness. Of course, they didn't have the lights at that time, and it's won 3-2 by the Black Yankees. So, boy, so there were some great pitching duels in the 30s, and Slim Jones, who was the Philadelphia Stars, great pitcher. Actually, they had 2 really outstanding pitchers at that time. Webster McDonald, who was a submarine pitcher, and then they had Stuart Slim Jones. He was a strikeout pitcher, and this guy was really giving Satchel Paige fits at that time. And boy, when those 2 guys hooked up, you know, you're watching 2 of the best pitchers in baseball. Slim Jones, if I remember correctly, he died in the 1930s. I can't remember exactly the details of him passing away, but I think it was something due to the elements and being outdoors, and maybe, you know, dying from that. So he didn't have a long career, but during the 1930s, man, this guy could bring it. He was one of the premier pitchers. And there's a couple of really good pictures of him, photographs of him out there that I've seen. So, yeah, so we know what Slim Jones looks like. And of course, you can't follow baseball and not know what Satchel Paige looks like. When I think about African-American athletes, I think about the most photographed people of the 20th century and African-Americans. And it would have to be in sports. It would have to be Joe Louis. Satchel Paige would be another one. And who would I say? I would think Satchel Paige and Joe Louis. If you go back to the 19th century, the guy probably the most photographed would be Frederick Douglass. Lots of photographs of Frederick Douglass out there. And so anyway, but those two guys. Oh, well, one more. Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson, the boxer, was another guy that was photographed many times over. So if you ever do work on those three players, the three athletes from the 20th century, you will find lots of photographs to illustrate your work. So anyway, I'm just kind of looking, and I'm getting a few people joining in. So thanks for joining in. I'm almost finished. I got one more fact I'm going to give you, and you might find this one interesting. It's September 30th, 1969. Hank Thompson, infielder for the Kansas City Monarchs, a man who was the first African-American player to break the color barrier in the American League with the St. Louis Browns, and also the National League with the New York Giants, died in Fresno, California. Man, I can talk a lot about him. Hank came to the Kansas City Monarchs in the 40s, early. I think it was like 1942, 43, something like that. And he was an infielder out of I think he was born in Oklahoma, but he was playing out of Dallas, if I'm correct, at that particular time. And the Monarchs picked him up and brought him in. He was just a great hitter, power hitter from the day. But a young guy, this guy barely 19, 20 years old. The Monarchs and many of these black teams, they could spot talent, and they would bring these guys in, in their youth and develop them. And so Hank Thompson was one of those guys. Of course, he went to the war. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and came back to the Kansas City Monarchs and played for them in 1946. He ended up, 1947, he and Willie Brown ended up going to the St. Louis Browns together. And so that's when, now they go together, but Hank Thompson gets in the game first. So he actually broke the color barrier first in St. Louis. And then, of course, they didn't stick with St. Louis. St. Louis wanted to bring them in, try to boost their attendance. They weren't committed to actually playing black players. So they ended back up at the Monarchs. And then Hank was sold again, but this time he was sold to the New York Giants organization. And I think, if I'm correct, he went to Newark, which is their minor league team, and then he came up to the Giants. And yeah, just a good ball player. Now, he did have some issues. And then when he got to the New York Giants, well, let me go back. I'll tell you the story. The Kansas City Monarchs had played the Indianapolis Clowns, and it ended up in a fight, and it was a pretty serious fight. And this happened in St. Joseph, Missouri, and they were playing an exhibition game out there, and so ended up in a fight. So some of the Kansas City Monarchs players, they didn't trust these guys. So when they got back to Kansas City, they purchased guns. And Connie Johnson told me this story. He said, so all of these guys now on the baseball team, about 4 or 5 of them had guns. So at the end of the season, Connie said a lot of, guys, they just quit carrying their guns. But Hank kept carrying his. And he was down in Texas, and he got in some kind of argument with a guy. Anyway, he shot and killed him. But he later on did make it up to the Giants, so he always had that in the background. I think the Giants were the ones who kind of took care of his attorney fees. So he ended up playing, had some good years. I think a couple of years he led the league in like putouts or double plays. He was a good player. Good third baseman, and played good ball. And of course, but he had a short-lived career, right? He had issues with his legs, and so he went out of baseball. And years later, he was picked up for robbing a liquor store, of course. So that was him. He had some troubles at the end. Of course, he ended up passing away in '69. And I remember in 1969, I was following baseball, and that was when baseball was celebrating 100 years of professional baseball. Started with the 1869 Cincinnati Reds, and in 1969, I remember all the players wearing a patch on their sleeve. So anyway, This is a little bit of history. I don't know how much you know about Hank Thompson. I don't know if I have that here or not. Let me see if I got here. I was looking through some things here. But I do have quite a car collection of Hank Thompson. I would get up and go get it, but I'm not going to. Oh yeah, let me reach over here right quick. Yeah, most people don't know, and if you ever follow me, you know that I started out being a baseball card collector many years ago. And so anyway, but I picked up a few. There's a Hank Thompson there. That's a Topps card. And then here's another one, 54 Topps, another Hank Thompson. Here's another Hank Thompson, number 3 in that particular top set. Hank Thompson there. Then he was also in the 51. There we go, 51. That's Hank Thompson as well. And then of course I have many pictures of Hank Thompson. That's Hank Thompson right there. You probably recognize that guy, Leo DeRocha, right there. So anyway, these are just a few of the things that I talk about. And so I appreciate everybody coming in and listening to me today and hearing a few stories about Grant Home Run Johnson and Harry Buckner and how about a team playing 3 games in one day. I wonder have that ever happened in the American and National League. Has anyone ever played 3 games in one day? I can think of several occasions where it happened. I remember 1931, Homestead Grays did the same thing, played 3 games in one day. The rough thing is trying to make 3 games in one day in 3 different cities. I think the Homestead Grays did that, 3 different cities. And you know what, a couple of years ago, I went out on a 200 city tour, right? And many times I would mimic black baseball because I would speak in one city at 10 o'clock, and then at 12 o'clock, I would do another presentation in another city, or maybe 1 o'clock or something like that. But I think, well, you know what I'm going to do? In 2025, I'm going to mimic the Negro Leagues, and I'm going to do 3 speaking engagements in 3 speaking engagements in one day in 3 different cities. I've never done that before. I've done 2 cities many times. So I think I need to try that, and that should be a lot of fun to do 3 cities in one day. And it kind of give you a feel of what these baseball players had to go through. Of course, in my case, I'll have to do my own driving. They did have a driver, and so I'll do my own driving. So I want to thank everybody for joining in today. This is the September 30th, 2025 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Like I say, when I go on Facebook, I can put a few more words in my title, so it becomes This Day in African American Baseball History. But it's all about baseball, and baseball is an interesting game. And in my case, because I've been in this history for over 45 years, I can bring a unique perspective. Like today, most days I have someone I talk to, but I did talk to a lot of Hank Thompson's teammates, Major League, or we put it, the National League, the American League, as well as the Negro League. Of course, talked to many of Satchel Paige's teammates. Also, Ruth Foster I talked about, who beat Bugs Raymond. I knew Ruth Foster's sister, talked to her quite a bit. I knew his daughter-in-law, she was one of my big boosters. So, but these are interviews that a lot of people did not get. And when we talk about the Philly Stars, Webster McDonald was another interview. So, but this is all good stuff. So they give me a chance to talk about all these wonderful things that happened. And this is history that we cannot let die. And we need to celebrate this history and continue to make it grow and for generations to come. This history I'm giving you now was history that I could not find when I was in my youth following baseball. And I have spent 45 years trying to change that for generations to come. And I think that I've achieved a little bit of that. And now you got a lot of other people on board. And that is a good thing, not a bad thing. So we're going to keep this history alive. And I do have a web page. It's called NLB Alive, nlbalive.com, if you're interested in that. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Negro League Man. I'll post things there that I don't post here. And you just kind of follow me. I think The next time I speak, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And I recently came back from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, probably within the month. I was down in New Orleans, and I was in Cleveland. So I get around, and so hopefully I'll get a chance to meet some of you guys as I go around touring. If you follow me, just let me know. I'm going to be meeting you down. And when you come down, if I tell you I'm going to be somewhere, you just come on. Okay, guys. So that kind of does it for me tonight. So I want to thank everybody for joining in. And I see some of these names. Brady the Baddie. That's an interesting name. And Alma Benchcomo. Okay, and there's somebody named Star Seed. I don't know if they said Milwaukee, not sure what that means. But anyway, thank you guys for joining in, and that concludes it for me tonight. So I'll try to get back tomorrow and around the same time and see what we can do. It'll probably be later tomorrow, but we can see what we can do to talk about baseball. October 1st is coming up, and of course you got the playoffs and everything like that going on in baseball. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about some of the modern day stuff. But anyway, right now I'm going to sign off. So thank you. Have a nice evening, and I'll see you soon.